Appamada's programmes and facilities are supported through your generosity. Your support really does make a huge difference. You'll find a link for contributions on the website at appamada.org/contribute. Thank you so much.
Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Vast is the robe of liberation, a formless field of benefaction. Wearing the universal teaching, I realize the one true nature, thus harmonizing all being. Welcome back, everyone. Good to see you all here. I suppose, Hilary, I was listening in. Why don't we just jump in on your question? How does that sound? Since I think
that sounds good. That sounds
it was
good.
an engaging question. Okay. So I heard you asking about, so I know that you're asking about collecting the measurements for the frame worksheet. That's the context. And I heard you asking about the seam allowances. So I want to highlight from the outset, and it's not clear to me if this is something you already understood or not, I'm just explaining it. So the measurement for that does not include the seam allowances. It is going to be the rectangle that is drawn from the seam allowances that are already there. Did you have a chance to mark out a new rectangle? Try to make that square and mark that out?
Okay, that's what I'm in the process of doing with 2 rulers and a small set square.
Wonderful.
So
okay.
I'm trying to make it rectangular. And what I noticed was my seam allowance that was already drawn in on the pieces is wider on the right hand side of 5A than it is on the left hand side of 1A. So the left hand side of 1A, it's a centimetre, and the right hand side, it's a 1.25 centimetres. And what I wanted to know was, does that matter? Should I take a bit out of that seam allowance and put it into the body? My stitches might end up being a bit close if I do that. In between the lines, to the seam allowances, I'm 27.25 at the bottom, and I'm 27.25 at the top.
Wonderful.
I don't know if that's
and
right.
What about the sides? What are
At the sides, I am between 16.25 and 16.5 on the right hand side, and on the other side I am 16 and 16.25, but I haven't finished making it a proper rectangle on that right hand side, so I should imagine they're both going to come in at 16.25.
Well, I don't
when
know
I've
if
made it fully rectangular.
I'm glad that you're going to continue trying to make it square, but I don't know if there is such a thing as a magic measurement for this. But I will say that yours are within a 0.5 centimeter of my measurements. So I think you're in a good ballpark. I think that
makes a change.
yes. And as far as that seam allowance goes, I say go with what is currently measured. Because I'm going to guess that the distance, that the 2.5 centimeters that defines kind of that panel width or up to the first stitch line, that was probably measured very closely, whereas there may have been some selvage or something near that edge. So I would just leave that line as it's currently drawn. Yeah.
Right. Thank you.
Yeah, no, great question. And glad to hear that we've got similar measurements for whatever that is worth. You know, that's how tradition works, right? We all just do similar things over and over.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Of course.
Thanks, John.
Sure. Thanks, Hilary. Okay. Sue, how about you? How are you doing today?
There we go. I've got my frame cut out, and I keep pinning in and repinning it, and I think I've about got there, and about to start sewing. I just got a bit confused where one edge has to lap over the other on the corner, because mine were just meeting. So I've gone back and rearranged them so the ones on the top are pointing down and the ones at the bottom are pointing upwards.
Good.
Is that correct? So
That
I
is right.
think I'm okay to start sewing.
Yes. Would you like me to, if you'll hold it up for a second, I can give you that added boost of confidence. Yes, that looks good.
Yeah.
Thank you, Maria. And both, yeah, and that was the front that you showed just now. You were holding up the,
Yes.
yes, that looks wonderful.
Wonderful indeed. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you for showing. Julia, how about you?
Yeah, I've been beavering away at it. So I've finished the frame.
Wow.
I've put me cheeky little corners in, and they're not too badly positioned at the back. And they, I think, hopefully positioned all right at the front.
They're well positioned on the front, yeah.
I've done 2 straps. Oh, can you see them?
I can see, yeah, I can see that there's fabric. It's such a long piece, it's hard to.
Yeah, and
yes, I can see your. So that is, I'm seeing just the folded edge. I'm not seeing any thread at the moment. That's just the shadow.
Right, that's the front part, and then that's where I've folded the edge over, and
Yeah,
so
and
that you've got the hidden edge just there.
Looks great.
Done those 2, and I checked out the length because I did a quick zoom with Lynn yesterday, just so she could see where I was positioning it, to try and get somebody else's view that, you know, I'd got the lengths right. And so I'm into marking out the neck piece at the back now.
And you've got just the raw fabric, and you still need to mark and measure?
That's just what I'm in the middle of, yeah, starting to do this evening, yeah.
Wonderful. That part is, the neck piece itself is relatively straightforward. Some folks get a little, there's a little bit of that, you know, origami, just kind of trust the process steps when it comes to inverting the neck piece with the straps inside of it. So when you get there, if you do have any questions, just let me know. But it seems like you have a good understanding, and you've made great progress.
Yeah, and thanks for the videos that from before, because they've helped me so much.
Well, that's what they're there for.
Hi, John. I've been progressing with the straps. So I finished all of the initial just sewing the 2 sides together. And I'm afraid, despite our conversation last time and despite looking at all of the videos relating to it, I still do not understand the interfacing.
Okay. Do you want to try explaining your understanding and checking against mine, or would you just like to hear me?
Maybe I can begin. So because I was confused, but I wanted to try to progress, what I've done is I've only done the running stitch along the long side, and then I've just left the thread loose. So I've not sewn at all across this the short edge yet.
Mm-hmm.
But so I think what I meant to do is at this stage, fold like that the seam allowance over to create the corner, and then sew, but it says don't include the body of the strap.
So I think, can I say what I think your next steps will be?
Please.
So I think go ahead and finish doing your running stitch that 1 to 2 millimeters outside the seam allowance line for that short edge, and that's still that pretty small running stitch, pretty tight, and then tie a knot so that it's good and secure, because this is the one that is going to help determine kind of the shape of the garment. You are going to try to hide that stitch so it's, you know, you won't see any of those threads at all, but it's good. It's better to make it straight now than to struggle. Go ahead and just sew the interfacing to the seam allowance as the all flat. So move the, which hand is which for you? I'm not clear what's right or left right now.
This is the right, and this is where the seam allowance is.
So move this, so that's how it will end up being, but slide the interfacing to your right until it only overlaps the seam allowance. Exactly, yeah. So that's how you're going to sew it. So you're going to sew the seam allowance, or you're going to sew that interfacing to just the seam allowance. And then you will fold it, in this case, with the interfacing towards you, so that that fold will come, yeah, that way. And so that should line up pretty neatly. And it's at that phase that you will do the corner tack, or maybe it's before that fold. I have note on this. Give me one moment, please. So what I have in my notes, and it still makes sense to me now, is when you reach that end with your running stitch, that is when you will tack that corner down. So start, how to describe this? So you start near that gap where you've skipped that middle 7 centimeters. I would say start there and sew towards that edge. When you reach that last corner, then fold under that short seam allowance, and then sew through that as well. And that can be kind of your final tack step. Is that clear? It's really hard to describe this.
Yes, so I'll end up doing the final edge and it will look like this, and I just sew as close to the top as is possible.
You don't need to actually sew the short edge to the interfacing, and I don't think. But what you do need to do is instead, so that blue fabric for that short edge, will you fold it under the interfacing so that it's
What I did was I didn't take the interfacing right to the end. I took the interfacing up to the seam edge for the short edge. So it was just short of the short edge. And then tacked it, as you said, John, tacked the interfacing onto the seam allowance, folded it over, and then I just folded the fabric on the top. So here's the bits I've chopped off, so I don't need them.
Okay.
So I've sewn the interfacing onto the seam allowance here.
Mm.
And what I did then was fold it back that way. Whether this is correct or not, I don't know, but this is what I've done. I thought so. It's been sewn onto there, then folded back, but I didn't go all the way to the top. And then what I did here was fold it over there.
And then you tacked at that corner.
And then just put a little corner stitch in here to hold it. Well, actually, I decided that it was better to fold these back each side.
I see that. That's really interesting.
On the grounds that when it was folded back on itself, these seams are better folded the way they're going to be at the neck piece. So I folded these back on themselves, but then at the top here, I folded this over.
And you didn't end up with that being too wide, with the interfacing being too wide for that? Because if you do it the way you've done it, where you're splitting it like that book at the seam, if you do that, I feel like that would reduce 1 to 2 millimeters the amount of blue fabric. Oh, I guess that would give you extra fabric, wouldn't it? So it would line up.
So in the end,
Yeah.
this is the one I've done.
It's tight, looks good, very square.
That's the one I've done, but I did it like that so that the interfacing was folded over there, and then I actually did tack that interfacing onto
or just the corner?
Just on the seam, just so it didn't go through the main body of the strap, but it just to hold it there on that top seam. Does that make sense?
I think that is what is supposed to happen.
I think when it said not to do it on the body, I decided what it meant was that you could fold the seam over, you could tack it onto the interface, but you shouldn't actually put any stitches through this main part. That's what I took to and that to mean.
And that's how I've read it as well.
I'm actually up to that part, John, as well, and I've done it a different way.
You have.
It's very confusing for Claire.
Yeah.
Oh, you've put me on.
Which way have you done it,
Right,
Maria?
so you've got the your corner here. So I've tacked my corner using a ruler to make sure I don't go through the corner. You know how you fold the corner down and then you fold the long part over, right? Yeah. So I've done that, the top's over and that's over, and I've tacked that corner. Now what I imagine I'm going to do, take the interfacing and place it across that top seam and sew it just on the seam, not going through the body, and all the way down that seam there, you know, tack it to that seam that goes all the way down, you know, so it comes out like that. So you're tacking it and then
but yours will
all the way down.
And so you'll fold over that seam allowance before you do that, all the way down?
Well, the seam allowance is already folded now. It's folded. Look, it's got the corner in.
But
and
I see
now, if I put that over and just stitch it just a couple of millimeters away from the end, and then stitch it down the side seam as well, it'll flap over like that, won't it?
And that's the way I did the one I'm wearing.
Right.
So I think it totally works, and that's the method that is described in the instructions.
Right.
So that is definitely an option, Claire, the way that Maria's done it. I think the way that Julia and I are describing is just, there's a bit, to me, it's simpler to have nothing curving or trying to be, I don't know, it makes more sense to me to have it laying flat as opposed to trying to deal with that corner first and then sew to that corner, to sew it flat, then try to finish up that corner. That's kind of the difference between Julia's method and Maria's method.
Okay, so I think then what I'm going to do is sew the interfacing on, go through the whole strap, both layers. So not quite like Julia did.
Yeah, that's true.
And then make
Claire,
sure that
be careful because you need to leave the gap in the middle. Oh no,
Oh,
that
yeah,
won't
yeah,
make
yeah.
any difference. Yeah.
and just make sure that I'm sewing on the outside of the existing line, but anywhere on the outside. And that I imagine, therefore, it doesn't need to be particularly tight or neat.
And not as tight or neat as the other, yeah.
Then fold so the whole seam is down. Tack the corner, but not sew along this line. And then turn it inside out.
Definitely tack the corner. I'm trying to decide if anything would go wrong if you did sew along the short edge. I don't think I ever did though. I don't think at any time I sewed the seam allowance to that short edge. So I think that you can definitely proceed with that as you described.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks everyone. Sorry that was involved.
The fun bit will be turning it inside out, Claire.
Yeah, I feel relaxed about that.
I've got me, what do you call them, chopstick ready to put it through and then put it down like a sock.
Yeah.
And if you've got, that's what I use the yardstick for as well.
Oh, right, so I don't need my chopstick.
Yeah, that's what I use to do mine, and it got a nice little roundy bit. So
oh, it's so short though.
Hmm?
You didn't have trouble with it creasing or something because of how short that is?
Not for the amount of time that it was on, no.
I'm just doing the middle line of my frame. I've finished one side. I'm just starting on a short side now. The one question that I have is just the tension. I'm not sure if I'm pulling the stitches too tight. Because it does kind of go like, has a little, like there's fabric and then it kind of goes down for the stitch and then back up. Is that how it's supposed to be?
No, I'm not sure I understand what you're describing. It doesn't seem to be puckering.
It's not puckering, it's just like more like this part. Like when I look at it flat, it kind of does just a little bit of that. You know what I mean?
So you're thinking it's too loose?
No, I'm thinking it might be too tight. So like if the piece of fabric was flat, when I put the stitch in, if I put the stitch too tight, it's going to do this, like a little bit like
it might,
bird.
yeah.
But I think
which would lead to that pucker if you did it too much, but you're not puckering yet.
No,
is that right?
But I've not ever really seen one of these in real life. Could you just hold your edge up so I can see you?
Sure. Let me put on the good camera and show you both examples I've got handy.
I just don't want to get too far and then have to rip it and pull it and do it again.
Yeah, reasonable. Here is one of them. Let me get that focus. I don't know why it stopped doing it. And two.
And can I see the backside too, John?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'm okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking. And Sophie, I see you've joined us. How are you doing?
So sorry for the noise, the bells of the cows. I'm still on. I've just undid the pictures I've sent you for the 4A and 2As that were sewn with the, on the B side, it was too low. I understand. It was in the, you might,
In the body, in
the body,
but not
exactly. So, but I'm struggling just to remember even how to pin them together again. So
yeah. And would you like to would you like a refresher on that? Or
that would be so nice, but I'm very yeah.
so
I remember
you
that
have which two pieces are we're talking about 2 and 4, right?
2 and 4, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it is the old I've used the language a lot of A is always on top of B,
Yeah.
and second line of top piece to first line of bottom piece. So second line of A to first line of B is what we're going to be doing. And if you have your little paper guide, there should be some example that shows how they assemble.
Yeah.
When finished. To begin, I don't have, I've sewn all my example pieces and still haven't made new ones. Let's pretend that these two are, so pretend that this is your 4A piece and
Yeah.
4A or 2A. So you're going to have your 2A at the very top.
Yeah.
And you're going to have your 2B here.
Yeah.
Line them up and do a pinch and lift method. So you've got them cut line to cut line. So it's going to be this edge here on the A piece
Yeah.
to this edge here on the B piece. And then you're going to hold them together so that they go back to back.
Mm-hmm.
Lift, then you put it down, and then you slide it so that the second line of your A piece is in line with the first line of your B piece.
So I slide the A piece.
Towards you, if you did it the way I did it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does that look and feel similar to this?
Yeah.
So that's how you align them to start. You're going to have, that's the B piece there.
Okay. And then I have to pin them on the line on the A side.
Yes, right on the crosshairs on the A side.
Yeah.
And you'll want to come out just in
And
the
this
seam allowance.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay.
So, yeah.
That's enough to move forward.
I think I'll start with that. Yeah. Maybe for future when I've sewn this back and they're all right, then what is the next thing I need to sew?
So then you're going to be attaching your panels, which are that's what I call the both 3A and 3B together is one panel.
Is there another line that should be sewn before? There's just
you're right.
one.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Golly, thank you for. So in that for that you're going to, so you got your 2A and your 2B.
Yeah.
So you're going to unfold like this, and this is that phase you asked if it needed to be pressed via email, if I remember.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
can get by with just being very careful with your fingers and focusing very closely on folding this under and very carefully pinning this line, this folded line at the bottom of the A piece to this line of the B piece. And you're going to try to get it just line to line. So you could almost see the line if you put it, you know, if you fold it like this, hold it like this, directly to that line there. And you're
Okay.
just going to sew, I can show, and it will end up looking like this.
Like that.
So you're going to sew as close to this edge as you can without risking, you know, the needle going off this fabric.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Feel free to, if you're not feeling confident, so it's optional. If you're not feeling confident when you pin this fold, feel free to send me photos and I'll take a look. But otherwise, if you feel confident, go ahead and we can always redo stitches if there's ever a need to.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So John,
Yes.
do you reckon it's better to have the interfacing slightly down from the end then and not right on the corner?
Well, yes. So you're not going to from the folded corner or just from the corner of the cut ends?
Oh, I've made myself too big. Like if you have it, right, not having it along that edge, you know, like, and then you pin it down,
Is that
you
the
know,
cut
so
ends
it
or the
opens out, but to
folded?
have it maybe to start maybe there rather
Can
than
you
along.
compare it? Can you compare it to what the other end looks like? So your interfacing should reach all the way to the folded corner at the other end. So
Yeah.
maybe compare the two and see if the length works out correctly. I think because you've already got that edge folded, treat this as though it's going to be the finished shape. And treat the interfacing as though it's going to be the finished shape of the strap.
Yeah.
So taking it pretty close, but with enough fabric for that reverted fold, so you lose, you know, 3 threads worth of fabric there. Yeah, if that's clear. I'm sorry, I'm fatigued today, so I want to.
No, that's fine. No, that's clear. That's clear.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm glad that's clear.
I'll make myself one big. There we go.
Could I please ask a question?
Yes, you may.
So I have discovered that on one strap I have sewn on the wrong side of the seam allowance line. So I'm going to unpick that, but before I unpick it, I'm going to do the actual sewing so I don't have to repin it as well. And also on the other strap where I have sewn on the right side of the line, I actually think I'm considering unpicking it as well, because I think a lot of it is more like 4 mil from the line rather than 2 mil.
That's okay, because you will have the ability for 2 reasons. One, the interfacing will help you determine that shape, and you can, switching cameras. So this is the edges of my strap. I can't, oh gosh, this autofocus just isn't working like it used to.
That looks pretty clear.
Okay. This is a poor example, but there are places where I can really demonstrate this. Yeah, so you can see here that I'm able to actually pull back quite a bit of fabric before you start to see stitches. So you can actually, if you're quite far from that seam allowance line, you can still invert and kind of shape it to be the shape as though it were that seam allowance line. And just, yeah, here's a really strong example. I knew there was one on here somewhere. That's probably, that would have been at 4 mil roughly.
Okay.
That,
Great.
you know, I can, so you can manipulate it once you've inverted it.
That's really
And
great
the
news.
interface, Yes, yes, it is, isn't it? Interfacing is a clever tool.
Brilliant. And so then just to check as well, while I am redoing one of the straps, just to check that I am redoing it correctly, that that this is okay in terms of tightness.
Yeah, I think that's on the higher end. Well, actually, I can't really tell the scale of it. Your camera is
Should
so
I-
good. What do those measure? Just
Yeah.
you don't have to hold it up with that. You can just tell me that.
They're like 5 mil, both the stitches and the gaps between.
Yes, that's good.
Okay,
That's fine.
great.
And you kind of
They
just
do look
want
very
to,
neat.
oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Maria.
I was going to say, you kind of, you, as long as you leave enough to sort of be able to stitch the interfacing on, isn't it? You need enough room for that. So I guess that's what I was thinking, that as long as I've got enough room to fix me interfacing on, you know, there's enough space at the end of the seam.
Yeah, I guess what's in my mind is that this is the line that will like dictate
Yeah,
the
yeah.
edge of the strap.
width. Yeah.
And so yeah, I guess I don't want it needs to not be so loose that it can distort where there's not thread holding it.
As I described or just demonstrated by, pulling the edges, it's one of the things that will help dictate that shape. That the interfacing also helps. So you've got kind of a two-layer reinforcement that will prevent us from having too wonky a strap at any point. And as you can always also choose the nicer looking strap as the top strap. So there's that too. It'll hide most of the other strap.
I've got parts of my salvage edge that have frayed off pretty much,
Yeah, and
where you can't
problematic.
actually attach the the salvage edge. So I'll just have to skip over that bit, Warner, and hope
you're
it'll
saying
be all right.
You're saying that your seam allowance is
Yeah, it's like
gone?
where I've done the first seam allowance, you know, for the width of the strap. Oh,
Mhm.
there we go. Yeah, it's like I don't know if I can look. It's like there's my seam allowance, and on this section here to here, it's like really frayed, and so you wouldn't be able to stitch anything to that. Do you get me? It's like where I'm pinning this. There's not going to be anything for it to grip.
Will you take a ruler to that? Because I'm guessing that might have actually been excess that should have been that you need to cut off before. So you might have like a pulled edge or something where that frayed edge was used to align the thread of a fabric. And that cut bit could have been used to indicate roughly where a meter falls or wherever. So will you take a ruler to that and just make sure the total width from with the seam allowances, is that where the chalk line is? I guess is what I'm asking.
No, there's a chalk line, and then it's like, a centimetre, and then there's the frayed edge, but it looks like it's a bit close.
So you should definitely have 8.4 centimeters somewhere between two chalk lines. So between the wide section between two chalk lines should be 8.4. And then on either side of that, I would want you to have at least half a centimeter on both sides of that 8.4.
I've
Ideally
got
1 whole centimeter. You do have that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anything that goes beyond 1 centimeter from, so you got 8.4, then 1, anything beyond that 1, that's extra. And you could actually cut that off now if you would like.
Probably be easier, wouldn't it? Because it's just interfering.
Yeah, I would tidy that up for sure.
Yeah.
Just make that a little,
I'll do that.
smoother.
I'll cut it off. Yeah,
Once
thank
again,
you.
it's these things I could see from across the table, no problem.
Yeah, it'd be a lot easier for you, wouldn't it?
I'm glad that's, I guess what I'm saying is never feel like you shouldn't ask a question, because You know, we assume that we all have the same materials as everyone else because we don't want to cause a fuss, but maybe that's not true.
No.
Yeah, it's definitely in my case.
John, I've got a question. Yeah, I've got a question. I don't know what a Hera is. What's a Hera?
A Hera is a tool, a small plastic.
Oh, that's that thing that Julia showed me the other day, is it? Where you... Oh, I haven't got that. I could use any sort of like a bit of a plastic spatula.
Yes. So things
Credit
that are
card.
credit cards, like a table knife, like a you know, like a not very sharp, mildly serrated table knife. The back edge of them often work.
Yeah. Okay.
The only risk there is don't be careful if you're going to do it on a wooden surface, so you don't damage the wood underneath. But
Oh, that's thoughtful.
There's any number of options that work. Any hard, pretty relatively rounded, smooth edge, but pretty tight will work.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So John, I've now, I think I won't say it's perfect because it can't be, but I've got my almost perfect rectangle measured out, and the tops and the top and the bottom are the same, and the sides are the same. So I'm now onto my frame. Do I iron it? Do I iron it first? It's all folded over.
Yeah, go ahead and iron it just so that you're working with a really smooth surface to measure on.
Okay. Okay, and so then it should fit for all of these measurements on the frame worksheet.
Yeah, I think we cut the frame piece to be 127 because most run close to 124 total. Because that's like the long end is 124. If that's no, sorry, 122 is what yours will come out to roughly be 124. But it should hold it long-wise comfortably.
So does that mean I'm going to be cutting some of it off?
Yes, you will. It should be a rough material, a rough.
Okay.
And it looked like from the width it might actually be rough in both directions. So you'll have some excess material for sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, John.
John, can I ask a question?
Yes, of course. Go ahead.
I'm looking now at putting the interfacing onto the neck piece.
Mhm.
I've sewed together the start of the neck piece, got my seam in the middle. I've just ironed that out, and it says pin interfacing to loose seam of neck piece. I'm assuming that means just one of those pieces that are left over from where we've sewn it together.
That's here in the photo. So the loose seam it's referring to is here when you first folded it out and ironed it.
Yeah.
So it's that bookend or opened seam. And you can see in this photo here that they have taken this material or this piece here, and they've actually pulled it out so that this edge, gosh, actually, let me share my screen with the instructions on it instead, because that I think would be clearer than pointing at the printed version. So this is that edge that it's suggesting that it be sewn to. And you can see here in this photo where that cursor icon is, that this is the same, that is that opened up, splayed out seam that you see here. So what they've done is they've simply pinned it. So you will have it like this, right? Where you've ironed it flat along the seam, but not at the edges. And you will lay the interfacing right on top of it, with your interfacing coming to those lines. And then you can pin to that seam, and this will be your finished result.
Right. Right. So we just kind of fold back one of those seams and sew along it.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
John,
Yes.
I'm assuming that you don't stitch the interfacing across the 7 centimeter space.
That's right. Nothing gets stitched across there at any point in the, well, until the neck piece is attached.
Right, thank you.
You're welcome.
John, it's Sue.
Yes.
Can I check
Hi, Sue.
something out with you?
Sure.
I've sewn the corners, and I've sewn right through from the front through to the right through to the back. Is that correct? Because it's quite difficult when it comes to folding the in the seam allowance inside.
I worry that that is not correct. Do you mean that you have, so you've gone all the way through what you see here
Yeah.
to the back?
Yes.
So that is not correct. So you will need to pull those, I'm afraid.
Will be it. Okay.
It's
So
a good trial run though.
yeah, I just bother. I've done them all as well. So, yeah. Okay. So
Oh, I'm sure they're beautiful.
They are actually, yeah. So what about the back? Do I go from the front up to the corner? If I'm not going through, when does the back get sewn?
So most people, there's two options. You can either use two pieces of thread or just one long piece of thread. I recommend the long. So you start, of course, you come up with your knot, you sew this front side, and you're working from inside the fabric.
Yeah.
When you get to your corner, you simply will invert. So when you reach your last stitch,
Yeah.
You will simply invert and make care to just come out wherever you want to start your first stitch.
Yeah.
And then you will continue down this edge and you will end in this seam allowance or just before this seam allowance.
Okay. Okay, I'll have some good experience of unpicking them all now.
Yes, I don't know if I've told this cohort or not yet, but on my very first Rakasu, I reckon there's about 6 to 7 meters of Namukebutsu stitch in a Rakasu, and I probably sewed 8 or 9 my first time through. So unpicking is part of the journey, I reckon. Was for me at least.
Okay, thank you. Not.
You're welcome.
Thanks.
Thank you for asking.
I'm just checking if this is bad practice, John. So I'm finding it so much easier to sew the interfacing on not using pins and just following just above the line of the seam line that we've just done for the straps. Just following that line carefully on the flap. And I keep checking it to make sure it's aligned on the other side, and it is.
That's an interesting thought. I think as long as you're two materials, you're not getting a bulb. So I think if you're very diligent and keeping a very close eye, that should be fine in this context. And I don't think it is a best practice of using the pins, just because the pins are there as a safety measure. So if your attention wanders, you don't end up with, an extra 2 millimeters of interfacing being sewn to the strap. So you end up with a bubble, if that makes sense. I think that's...
Yeah, I'm having to be really careful, but I've just found using the pins was causing a lot of bubbling and they're just in the way. So, and without them, I'm just following that line so carefully and slowly, and it's just, and keep folding it over to check, and it just seems to be happening.
It sounds like you're confident in your method and you're pleased with your results. So as long as you know what to look for and how to inspect when you're done, go for it. Yeah.
Right, great, thank you. I've got the go ahead. I don't have to sit here feeling guilty.
No, it's all a discovery
I did the
process,
pins
right?
twice. I did do the pins twice, and there was just all this bumping and lumping and Yeah.
Well,
So yeah, not for
Just-
me. I don't think.
yeah, just inspect your final result. That's, I think, my big guidance.
Great, thank you. You see Julia
Yes.
smiling.
No, I did my first one diligently, pinning it all together. And I found it very cumbersome. And then the second one, I think because I knew what I was doing, I did exactly what you're doing.
Yeah, that's what I've done, but without stitching the first one. I've just thought, no, these pins are going.
Yeah.
That's y'all. How stiff is the interfacing that y'all are using? I don't know.
It's quite
Is it-
stiff.
Okay, that's good at least. I know I had trouble with one that was very almost feathery, and it was not pleasant. Pinning was a nightmare.
Yeah, this is definitely quite stiff, and so I think that's why the pins are bulging it up more. I'm not sure, but unless my pinning is just terrible, one or the other.
Yeah, and it sounds like you probably have to pull the pin out well before you even got to it. Which at that point, how much did the pin help?
Exactly. Yeah. I can see Hilary wanting.
Yeah. I've got a really basic question.
Sure.
Which is the right side of the frame material? Because I'm just reading the frame worksheet and it says do all the measuring out on the right side of the fabric. Is there a right side?
Not for this blue material. That this Bella. Technically, yes, of course there is. It has to do with the way it's wound on the bolt. But this broadcloth material, Bella Solids, no, Moda Bella Solids Sky Blue, this material doesn't seem to have any particular right or wrong because it is a broadcloth.
Okay.
So the only times it really matters is if there's already chalk lines. Once there are chalk lines, you have decided which side is which per the instructions. But no, for now.
So I've kind of gone with assuming that the side that had the word frame written on it was the right side, but I'm just looking at them now before I actually put my chalk lines fully on, and it's hard to tell, isn't it?
Yeah, I've not noticed any visible difference, certainly not.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, John.
You're welcome. I think your assumption, though, that the side that was marked on, that probably was the right side.
John, I've got another issue with the neck piece.
Yes, what's that?
Turn, right, so I've sewn it together, put the lining in. It says turn inside out, so I've turned it inside out, which means it's the right way round, I think, because it was inside out before. Fold in half, end to end with seam showing. So does that mean folding like that?
That's exactly right.
And then it says pin line to line, so just outside the line. Is that this selvage edge here on this corner?
No, where you have that pin now, that's where you'll be pinning.
Pin line to line, so just outside of line.
Yes.
Towards your edge. I don't know what I'm sewing.
So I'm going to give you a sneak preview. This is done with a sewing machine, so it's not going to be exactly like this. So this is a facsimile of what you are currently doing.
Right.
So as you can see, that is so there's going to be two different things that are sewn. First, you're going to sew just sewing the line that you're about to sew, and then you're going to sandwich it between your straps, as you see here. And that is going to be the phase at which you invert. And this is that origami step. So what you're doing, this is, I believe, right on the line. And let me double check. Yes, it should come up very close to the line because this is a 1.5 centimeter seam allowance, right? So if you have sewn it this way and then you've folded it end to end and you're sewing those seam allowances together. And then you insert it 1.5 centimeters in this phase here between the two straps. You're going to end up sewing on top of that line again, or just below that line. What am I trying to say? Goodness.
Do I sew these two pieces together? Do I sew this one and this one together across
Yes,
that line?
The two ends that you folded like this. Yes.
Yeah.
So 1.5 centimeters there.
Yeah. So I'm doing a whole line along this short edge then.
That's right.
1.5
Pinning line to
centimeters
line
in.
and sewing just above the. So you're going to pin it line to line and then sew
Yeah.
just above.
Just above it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'll come
Welcome.
back for the next stage. Can only go through one at a time.
I think from here, having seen this is the part that confuses people, I think. And then from here, it's simply a magic trick of you feed one edge through and magically the whole thing inverts and becomes the correct orientation. Similarly to the experience of the frame, it's just kind of like voila, like wow, all of a sudden I have a neck piece. That's, I think, the part that confuses people the most. So now having seen this now, I think you may be able to trudge forward some.
John, can I ask you something else?
Yes.
Okay, so this frame piece of fabric has been carefully cut to be 13 centimeters wide, but the frame worksheet says that you want 10.4 centimeters. So
Yes.
Is that assuming you're going to be cutting something off all the way along the length?
That's right.
Okay.
And whether if you feel that one of the, like if you have reason to believe that one of the long edges is straight to the grain, or at least to your satisfaction, then you could maybe only cut one side. So one side will end up being your finished edge, one of the current sides, and then you'll cut back only one side. Or you could you could do your marking fully within your fabric and cut all four sides, whichever makes most sense to you.
Right. I've been reading ahead on the instructions, and it looks really complicated. Is there somewhere where there's a video where you explain how you'd put it together? You know, it says, yes, place the two ends of the frame together with chalk marks inside. Is there a video with that?
Yeah, there are 2 or 3. The keywords in the running timestamps, the keywords would be dog ear, maybe 2 or maybe 1. Frame.
Ear. Yeah.
Frame, pinning frame. I think pinning frame is probably going to be the most common language. I think with the first cohort, so the 2022 cohort, I think I was really diligent in documenting like every step of this Rakasu that I'm still sewing. So there should be one where I say to the whole class, like, even if you're not here, I'm just going to do it all on video and explain it. So that should be available somewhere.
Okay. Have you given us the 2022 ones, Maria?
Yes, they're all on there from, I think the second cohort are from about class 30 something, and everything behind that is the class of 22.
Are they available on the Epimada site then? Because
yes,
you've not sent us emails to us.
Yeah, I've put them all on the Epimada site, and I've also time-stamped them all as well. So if you go on the timestamp sheet on Google Documents and type in dog ears or frame corners or whatever it is you're up to, you'll get a list of where it's tagged everywhere.
Okay, I'd have to download Google Documents. I don't use it.
Ah, right. because I've
It
put them
should
all
be.
as well.
It should just open in a browser. You should not need an additional software.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll send
Thank
you the document and see what you make of it.
Oh, Maria, you do so much already.
Really.
Thank you.
John,
Yes.
Doggy.
I'm just about to finish off the middle line on this frame and start the line closest to the edge. Is there anything different that I need to consider when I'm doing that, or I'm basically just moving up and doing it right at the edge, just like what I just did at the middle?
I admit my attention was not fully with your question when you began. What are you working on?
I'm just finishing the middle line and I'm about to move to the very edge line.
Okay.
And so I'm just doing exactly the same thing, just another 2 centimeters up, right?
Basically, yeah. It's going to be, it's just like with these, when you were doing these edges or these types of seams, except now at the very outer edge.
Okay.
So you're going to get as close as you reasonably can without, feeling like you're going to fall off.
And I'm still going all the way through for the interface and everything, so it shows on both sides, right?
That's right.
Okay, thank you.
Hilary,
Yeah.
sent you that document in chat. So if you want to try and open it just to see if you can, otherwise I'll send you it in a different format.
Oh, thank you. Let's have a look.
And it
Struggle to
looks
get
like
back in if I open it. It looks like I'll be able to open it. I'll end up losing you if I try and open it, but I'll try.
I think
I can hear you now, but I won't be able to see you.
You just have to click the little zoom box wherever it is on your screen again to see us again.
I think classes 16 and 17 might be the ones most relevant. Maybe looks like there's 2 17s, 17 part 1 and part 2, and those are probably going to be the two that stand out the most at my first glance. I can look closer.
Thank you. Now, how do I get back into Zoom?
Find your little where it says Zoom. Is it at the bottom of your screen where you've got all your apps?
There we go.
Yeah, you got it. Hey, she's back.
Last time I actually rejoined when I tried to click on one of your links. So we learned something new. Thank you.
You do.
Whatever works.
We're all learning here.
Aren't we just?
We're at time, so find a stopping point.
Gosh, look at that.
Really flew.
That's gone ever so quick.
My one goal for the class was to buy a chalk marking pencil so I can make new demonstration pieces. I still have not done it. So time flies when you're having fun, right?
We had a lot of questions for you this time, John.
I sewed for 20 minutes. I have zero excuse. I could have easily purchased this. That's an attention span issue. Okay. One to the altar and one to each other. So good to see you all.
Yeah, you do. Thank you so much for all your help. Everybody's help's wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I shall miss you next week, so apologies.
Oh, and apologies from Marley. Her knee was playing up a lot last night, so she's very, very tired today. So she's having today resting.
Lovely to see you all.
Bye. Happy
Bye.
sewing.